Welcome to myFace, myStory, voices from the craniofacial community, with your host, Dina Zuckerberg.
Hello and welcome. You are tuned into myFace, myStory, voices from the craniofacial community. We are a group of peers that see each other, hold space for one another, and support each other as we navigate life while living with craniofacial conditions like cleft lip and palate, Apert syndrome, and Pierre-Robin syndrome. And don't forget to click subscribe so that you'll never miss a future episode. I am Dina Zuckerberg, Director of Family Programs at myFace. I was born with a cleft lip, a hearing loss, and no vision in my left eye, but it has never stopped me from doing anything I've ever wanted to do in my life. I had 6 surgeries, years of orthodontics, and speech therapy when I was growing up. I was teased in school. Kids would say mean things, and I would sometimes sit alone in the lunchroom and on the school bus. I always say there's power in the shared story in knowing you are not alone. So anyone out there like me, I see you. We all do. It's about people like us being seen and heard, about sharing stories from the craniofacial community. Thank you so much for joining me as we discuss this important topic, bullying at any age. October is National Bullying Prevention Month. Did you know that 1 in 4 children in the United States say they have been bullied? And bullying doesn't necessarily stop when we become an adult. It may become more subtle, whether it's in the dating world or in the workplace. I actually don't love the word bullying because for too many, bullying brings to mind just the most aggressive acts like hitting someone. It can be just as hurtful, if not more hurtful, to exclude someone or talk behind someone's back or write a mean post or comment about someone on social media. We will explore all this and more. This is a safe space, a space where the voices of the craniofacial community are heard. And we welcome your participation in the live chat throughout tonight's conversation. You can also ask your questions of our panelists and we'll answer them later in the program. Before we move into today's episode, I would like to introduce my special guest holding space with me today. Scott Donnelly, Morgan McGahan, Naomi Heather, and Patricia Simon. Thank you all for joining me. I'd like to ask each of you to introduce yourself briefly. Scott, how about you start us off?
Thank you, Dina. My name is Scott Donnelly. I am 43 years old. I live with my wife and 2 children in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I was born with a severe cleft lip and palate that extended all the way up into the right part of my eye.
Thank you. Morgan?
Thank you, Dina. Hi, my name is Morgan McGahan. I currently live with my parents in Atlanta, Georgia. I am a college student studying special education at Georgia State, and I was born with Apert syndrome.
Thank you. Naomi?
Thank you, Dina. Hi, I'm Naomi Heather. I'm 22 years old. I live in New York City, and I was born with a bilateral cleft lip and palate.
Thank you. And Patricia Simon?
Oh, hi, everyone. I am 60 years of age, so I'm a little bit older. I live in a northwest suburb of Chicago. I was born with a cleft lip and palate, and that's about it.
Okay, thank you. So we are going to be vulnerable tonight. I think this is too important of a topic not to be open and honest so that we can help others who might be struggling with being teased, bullied, or excluded. Can each of you briefly share a moment when you were a child, when you were teased, bullied, and or excluded, how did it make you feel and how did you handle it? So again, I'll start with Scott, if you have a story to share or a moment.
Sure. When I was a child, there was another child who was my age in my class, and it felt like from 4th grade to 6th grade, this individual just went out of his way to spread rumors about me, and just from class to class, he'd walk up and he'd elbow me, the books would come out. He made sure that every day he knew that, or I knew that he was there, and just really bullied me. I can't put it any simpler than that. He really bullied me from 4th to 6th grade.
Yeah, I think those are the hardest years, those middle school years. It's not quite middle school, but almost. Yeah. Thank you. Morgan, do you have a story to share? A moment?
Yes. Thank you, Dina. I was in high school and I played basketball for my high school, and there was another player on my team who uncontrollably went up and whacked me with a foam finger. And then when I asked her, why did you whack me? She was like, "You don't tell me what to do." And I'm just like, okay. And then I obviously told my coach about it, and it just made me feel really bad about myself and really alone.
Yeah, and sadly, I think we all have stories like this in our lives. Naomi, do you have something to share?
When I was in high school, I had a friend my freshman year who turned out to be the worst bully I've ever had. He terrorized my life for 3 years. He would leave me notes telling me to kill myself. He would say really awful things to me. He would get his friends to throw pens at me. He would pretend to like me and want to be my boyfriend just to humiliate me. It was really, really tough to deal with. And he would always say behind closed doors, because he was my friend behind closed doors, that it was to help me, which
Wow.
did not help me at all.
I can imagine that would not be helpful. And Patricia, I don't know if you have a story to share or a moment.
Yes, I was about 10 years old, and my parents had signed me up to go to day camp for the summer. And I went to camp one day, and it was that day that their kids were so mean to me. And they would just make jokes and stare. They were just really awful. And I came home and I said to my parents, I am never going back to that camp again. And they had signed me up for the whole summer. And so my sister ended up going. And I eventually, one of my children's books that I wrote was about going to camp, because I want people to know that there are camps out there for kids that have craniofacial issues. So there are places that you can go to where you feel accepted and that you won't be bullied.
Yes, sadly, I have a similar story of going away to sleepaway camp, and there was this girl, Amy, who just proceeded to make my summer really difficult, doing all kinds of mean things, and she was sort of the leader of the pack. So sadly, I can relate to that, and I agree with you, Patricia, that there are camps for kids with craniofacial conditions and siblings even. And we actually at myFace sent some kids to a camp 2 summers. So, and it's been an amazing experience for them because they can just go and be who they are and bond with others who have similar experiences. So I agree. Thank you. So I think that what's difficult, at least I know it was for me, is that so much of bullying happens when there's not adults around, and then the kids could be really nice when the adults were around. And so I don't know if anybody, I know I kind of experienced that when I was growing up, this sort of they would do things when there was no one around, and then they would be really nice or act differently when the teachers or the adults were around. So I don't know if anybody else had that, but
Yeah, I had that a lot. A particular thing I had in my high school was they would be really, really condescending, especially to kids with learning disabilities. They would pretend to be your friend and make fun of you to your face. I wouldn't tolerate that. I always got in trouble for getting into fights with those kids, but it was very backhanded. It was rough.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I can relate to that. That's sort of, that's you don't quite know how they're going to be or what they're going to do. I remember sort of sitting on the school bus and kids tapping me on the shoulder, and I turn around and there's no one there. There's sort of little games that they would play. Does anybody have anything else they want to add to that?
I think also it's not just the children. So I think parents they play such a huge role in this as well. They actually, the kids could be great, but when they come home, it's whatever maybe they're saying some negative things about the child, and their child picks up on it, on their maybe, oh, you don't want to associate with that child because they have some issues going on. So I think a lot of this is based on the parents and how they conduct themselves, and the kids pick up on that. So I think that it's not just the children, but it's also the parents have such a huge role in this and how they address bullying.
Yeah, I think sometimes we need to educate the parents or the adults more than we need to educate the kids. And I also think children model the adults and their parents' behavior, and so I think they have to set by example. So I agree with you on that. I think it's really important. So in relation to this topic on bullying and exclusion and all of that, what piece of advice would you give to your younger self who was going through these challenges? And do you think you might have responded differently knowing what you know now as an adult? I don't know if anybody wants to comment on that.
I can answer that. I would give myself, the advice I would give myself would be, what other people think of you is none of your business, and to keep moving forward, and that anybody who makes fun of you or has something nasty to say probably isn't happy within themselves, and that, aggression and that pain is only being directed at me for to let their anger out, and it's not me. It's not my fault. I didn't ask for it. I didn't ask to be treated that way, and I didn't do anything. And I think I would have been a very different person if I understood that earlier.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Morgan, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, so going off what he said, it's not you, it's them, and they might not understand what you have, so don't stick up for yourself and know that pain is temporary and what you're feeling is also temporary, and those are the people who you trust and you love, and it's going to be okay.
Great advice to give to yourself now. And Scott, did you want to add to that?
I mean, I completely agree. I think for me, bullying is so much about power. There's that expression, hurt people hurts people. And bullies are by and large people who I find don't have power in their own lives. And so they want to take it from me. And, I have power in my own life. I don't have to give that power away. So just be myself and smile and move on with your day, because that person is not coming from a place of truth. They're coming from a place of hurt. And that's a difference to me.
It's a great point. It's a really good point. We actually have a comment from Adele that she says there are also adults who bully children based on a child's appearance. Does anybody want to comment on that or have any thoughts on that? I think it's an interesting point.
Yeah, sometimes they make ignorant comments that maybe they don't realize what they're saying. Like, you may say, well, what happened to you? Or staring, or there's certain things that adults will do that maybe they're not even aware that they're doing it, that it impacts the child and adult. So I think that's very true that the adults do the bullying.
Yeah. Someone I know, Claudia, her piece of advice is always think before you speak. And I think it's so simple, and yet it's great advice to give to people, because I think sometimes I understand that when you meet somebody who looks different or acts different, you may not, it's a surprise, right? So you're naturally curious, or you naturally don't understand something, and so you might be a little even frightened. But I think it's really important to think about how you respond to somebody or how you ask somebody about the difference. And I think sometimes we forget that to do that. Which leads me to the first thing one sees when meeting someone is, for the first time, is the face, right? And so with the pandemic, we were all wearing face masks, and for once we were all on an even playing field. Now with kids going back to school in person and removing the mask more, and even we as adults, what are your thoughts about this? And I know, Patricia, you have written a children's book on this very topic, and I'd love to have you share a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, so I collaborated on this book, Simon Says, Mask On, Mask Off, with a girl that I met through Facebook, and she's 9 years old, Abigail Grady. And we decided to write this book together to address the fear of revealing your mask, taking it off, and showing people who you are and what you look like. And it can be very, very scary. And the book is basically about, everybody wears a mask, whether it be a facial mask or a internal mask. And it's very difficult to reveal the real you. But the message is, this is who you are, accept and be proud of who you are. Stand tall. And once you accept yourself, then you can be the leader. You could be, Dina, as you always say, be the upstander. And it just reminds people that everyone has something going on, and like you said, just really give people the benefit of the doubt. And we're all here. Let's make it a kinder, nicer world. And that's basically what the book is about.
Yes, I was really privileged to write the introduction for that book. So thank you. But I think it's really been an interesting period, and I even had a mom reach out to me recently because her child was wearing the mask the whole year, and then now going into middle school and taking off the mask and being with new kids, she was worried about how the kids were going to respond to that. So I think it's a very valid, real experience for some kids. I don't know if anybody else has anything else they'd like to say. Naomi?
So first off, I wanted to say, Patricia, everything you said just hit the nail right on the head. It was so lovely because we all guard ourselves. We all have parts of ourselves that are really vulnerable and close to ourselves. And for us, even though a big part of that is on the outside, we have to learn that vulnerability is important, and being vulnerable doesn't make you weak. It actually makes you very, very strong. I had one thing come back to me, but yeah, I think that was really lovely.
Thank you. And I agree. I think showing our vulnerability is what brings out our personality and allows us to shine. And it's sometimes it can be scary to show our vulnerability, but I think as I've gotten older, I've learned that I think it's a really important thing to do. And Scott, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I also struggle with this, but I think to a certain extent I have some power in that situation as well. People respond to us in a large part the way we allow them to respond to us. So if I go in to the first time I'm meeting someone and I'm taking off my mask and I'm looking at the ground and I'm scrunched up and I'm trying not to make your eye contact, that sets off one impression. Whereas if I come into the same situation, take off the mask, and I look you directly in the eye, and I smile, and I'm engaging, confidence sometimes is fake it till you make it. And it's unfair that that burden has to be placed on our shoulders, 1,000%. But it is something that I've learned over time. When I'm just confident in my own self-image, when I smile, when I'm drawing you in with my body language, what this looks like fades away pretty quickly. And soon you're looking in my eyes and checking out my smile instead of asking questions.
It's so true. How we present ourselves is such a big part. I saw a huge shift when I started carrying myself different, when I started to express myself in different ways and be much more authentic and open and welcoming rather than being afraid and closed off. I saw a complete change in how people reacted towards me. And I saw much more people want to be around me to begin with. We can't control how others always treat us, but we can set a precedent and we can set a boundary.
Absolutely. I agree so much with that. I think how we present ourselves is how people will react to us. So absolutely. And we actually have a comment from Samantha who says, I'm glad this question was asked because her sister started high school, and when she returned to school in person, she felt shy about how she looked and about lifting the mask to show because of her cleft lips. So and her cleft lip scar. So I think it's very much a topic for a lot of people, a real thing for a lot of people, and also even for us adults too when we're going back out into the world. And somebody said to Scott, 100%, Scott, confidence comes from within. And when we feel confident in ourselves, others will follow suit. So true. So I want to shift a little bit to talk about how cyberbullying is something that people deal with today that some of us did not deal with growing up because we're of the older generation. But I think it's almost easier to bully people online because there's a level of anonymity that you don't have when you do something mean to someone in person. And Naomi, I know you have done lots on Instagram with your makeup and have people bullied you and made nasty comments about how you look. Can you talk about that, and what would you like to say to these people if you had the opportunity now?
So I run a makeup account on Instagram and TikTok where I basically share my art, but I also talk about my life and what it's been like growing up with my conditions. I've had a lot of negative comments, more than, let's say, quote, my normal friends that haven't been born with any craniofacial conditions. So at first I was really angry about it, and I was really hurt because I think people don't understand how vulnerable you have to be to share so much of your life on the internet. It's not necessarily for everyone, but I know it's something that I want to do because I didn't have that, person to look up to when I was growing up. So it's really always important for me to hold my ground and continue to share my life experiences and my stories anyway. I've had a lot of nasty comments and it makes me upset. But at the end of the day, I know that the people that comment these things aren't happy with themselves, because I'm very happy with myself. At the end of the day, I love myself to death. And I'm not going to be commenting on other people's posts about the way they look, what they do, because it's not my business and I'm staying in my lane. I can go to every profile that someone has said something nasty to me to, and I will not see a profile picture. Half the time they're on private. They don't have half as many followers as I do. Not that it matters, but these people don't feel good. They're irrelevant, and they feel very powerful standing behind a screen. Because there is a degree of anonymity. And what I would say to them is, I feel really sorry for you. I'm sorry that you're going through what you're going through and you're hurting. And I'm sorry you have to go through that, but I don't want to be your punching bag. I'm not going to be your punching bag. And every breath I take without your permission makes me a happier person. And I'm going to continue to do what I want to do anyway, because your approval means absolutely nothing to me.
I love your outlook, Naomi. I think it's such a healthy way to look at things. Does anybody have anything else they want to add to what's been said? We actually have a comment. I know it can be a chore to make people forget what we look like. Each of you have imparted wonderful wisdom, and I absolutely agree with that.
I don't think I want people to forget what I look like and look past it. That's never been my thing. I don't want people to look past the fact that I have a cleft and I've had these life experiences, because it has shaped me as a person. I want them to embrace that and love me for it anyway. Because there's nothing wrong being born this way. There's nothing wrong looking the way I do. There's everything right about it. So I don't want people to look past that. I want people to embrace me as I am, 100% as I am.
I love that. I always say it's just a part of who I am. It's just a piece of me, and I am that person, and I'm also more than that person born with a cleft. So, yeah.
I think more people need to listen to Lady Gaga. I was born this way.
Mm.
What
did she talk about?
It's just such a powerful message. We were born this way, and unkind words do hurt. You can be the strongest person, and when you get a message and someone writes something negative, it does hurt. But we, as a craniofacial community, we are the ones that are here to show people kindness and acceptance and what it's like to extend your hand to others. There's nobody in the craniofacial community that are writing negative comments about people's appearance or negative things about people. You won't see that. because we are a community to embrace and to help and support you in any way. And myFace is doing so much to help the community with all of these different programs to help to make sure that we're okay, that what can we do to help support the community. And I think that we are just we're just a power to be reckoned with.
I agree with you. I think it's so important to find that community. If you don't have the community and you're a member, you are born or acquired a facial difference, I think it's really important to find that community. I know it really changed my life when I found that community and found that support, and through the work of myFace, and that, like I say, there's power in the shared story and knowing you're not alone. So what advice would you give to, because I know parents struggle with this too, so what advice would you give to a parent whose child's being picked on at school? How can they help their child? I always tell parents that I think what's not said by a child is just as powerful as what is said. So I was the child that came home from school and said everything was fine even when it wasn't, and I did not talk. And so my advice usually to parents is listen to your child and hear what they have to say and what they're not saying as well. And if you listen to your gut, what your gut says. So I'd be curious to know from any of you, what advice would you give to a parent who wants to help their child but is not quite sure how to? Morgan, did you want to add to that?
So also listen to your child, but also not just your child, maybe the child's teacher, because I feel like some children are scared to tell their parents in spite they might get in trouble. But like go to the teacher and be like, hey, is my child doing okay? And then that's when you have the information.
And Scott?
What I would say to parents is the best thing you can do is present a consistent, positive self-image of the entire child. When someone comes along and tries to break down a part of that, when they have that consistent whole self-image of themselves, that really doesn't do as much damage. I would also say, it's one thing to teach our children, and I was taught what to do when someone is staring. And it's a curiosity thing, and they don't know that they're doing it, and they stare a little too long. There are ways that we in the craniofacial community learn how to deal with that. I think it's another to deal with someone who's actively bullying your child. And no tolerance for that bullying shouldn't just be a rule in a school handbook. It should be a value of the community that you as a parent can speak into. So not only is my child better than this, but our school is better than this. Our learning environment is better than this. Wherever that environment is, you're better than this, and standing consistently with your child to say, my child and I are not going to stand for it, not only because it's not nice, but because we're a part of a community that's stronger than this, better than this, and seeks more than this out of every member of our community.
Thank you, and I agree. Naomi, did you want to add something?
To go along with what Scott said, as a parent, you have to help your child build proper self-esteem. I think that's something a lot of people are missing out on, because you can't always control how other people act and treat your child. Although 100% you should always stand your ground and communicate and fight for your child and for equal treatment. But help your child build proper self-esteem and confidence. Help them find things they're good at that will help them feel better and stronger as a person. Because if you have a bunch of things that you're good at that you have value in, you are going to be a much more confident person. And remind your child how beautiful they are despite their condition anyway. You know, you are beautiful despite anything that anyone could say, and remind them that hurt people, and to keep going and put their head up high and keep pushing forward. Yeah.
Really great advice, and I absolutely agree with all this amazing advice. We actually have a comment to Scott that the home life is so important. My parents were a constant source of love and support for me, and I knew I could always come home and be safe with whatever I was feeling. Yes. So here's what I think. I think we need to focus also on I think we tend to focus on the victim of the bullying and less on the person who is doing the bullying. Do you think we need to also look at the bully and why they behave the way they do? Do we need to look at their behavior as well? I'd be curious to hear your opinion on that. And I think, Naomi, you had some thoughts on that.
Come back to me.
Okay. Scott, you want to say it?
I agree that bullies don't bully out of a vacuum, so there's probably something going on with the bully. I also think it's not necessarily the child who's being bullied's responsibility to do that addressing. I think a parent can help navigate that. I think a well-placed teacher can navigate that. I think certain adults in the community can address that. It's not my responsibility to show my bully why they're bullied. I have too much on my plate as it is. So I think, the biggest thing you can do to prevent bullying is getting a community around the bullied. And if that community also wants to embrace the bully, that's the community's decision and their responsibility. But I don't want to put that responsibility on the child or the teenager, or even the adult getting bullied. For me.
True. I agree with you. It's not our responsibility to deal with the bully or to have to address the bully. But I agree. I think it's the responsibility of the adults or the teachers. I kind of wish when I was growing up that the teachers had seen what was going on and spoken up on my behalf. I think I want to believe that it's better today. I don't know if it is, but I feel like I would have liked that more when I was growing up to have, which kind of leads me to my next point is that there's a word that I love, which is upstander. I think it's easy for us all to be a bystander, but to be an upstander is you see something is wrong that is happening and you choose to do something to make it right. And it was actually recently put in the dictionary. So I know I wish I had upstanders in my life when I was growing up, and which it goes to kind of Scott's point is that having those people in our lives that stood up for us or even can stand up to us now. So I was wondering if anybody here has an upstander that in their life that stood up for you. Or not, but I was just wondering if anybody has a story they could share.
I didn't, but I do have a story of the time I had to be. In my high school, there was a boy who was on the spectrum, and he had a dream of becoming a famous rapper. Someone in the school found his SoundCloud account and shared it around, and it was the talk of the school. Kids were being really awful to him and making fun of him. They would pretend to be his friend and challenge him to rap battles so they could film him and humiliate him. And at one point during the school year, I heard these kids in my class talking about it. And I had enough because I'm not going to allow anyone to be treated poorly on my watch. Absolutely not. So I ended up standing on a desk and yelling at these kids and saying, I don't know what your problem is. He has more, guts than you. will ever have to share something so dear and personal to him. I eventually had to get escorted out of the classroom because I got a little mad. But I think that was one of my proudest moments, and it didn't really matter how awful they were going to treat me afterward. I knew I was doing the right thing, and whoever your kid is, you should always teach them to do the right thing, because you never know who's listening and who will be motivated by you standing your ground. And I hope that kid will become a rapper anyway, because like I said, they don't have the guts to do it, and that's why they're complaining, because they don't have the self-esteem and the confidence, so they have to take it out on other people. Yeah.
Naomi, bravo to you for doing that. So there's an example of being an upstander. And one of the things I always say to the kids that you have the power to do the right thing even when you're the one being challenged, and that's a perfect example of that. So I say thank you for doing that. Morgan, did you want to share something?
Yeah. So I have siblings, and when I went to summer camp, I'm a triplet, and so I have a sister and brother and an older sister. And my triplet brother and sister, we always went to summer camp, day camp, and every day we would have one or two kids come up to us and be like, "Why does she look funny?" And my sibling could be like, "Do not ignore it," and then they would explain to them, "This is how I look," and they would be kind of like my protectors, and like they always would tell me if something was bad during the day, come to them, and they would kind of fight, but like not really fight. And then so yeah, they're my upstanders.
Thank you. We actually have a comment from Naomi. Be the advocate. Excellent advice, Naomi. Stand up for the one who cannot stand up for themselves. Absolutely. So thank you both for sharing your upstander stories. So just briefly, I want to address that while it is not okay, while it's not bullying directly, I think staring sometimes can be just as hurtful. I think it's natural, which I said earlier, for people to stare at someone when they have a difference that you've not seen before. But when does it become hurtful or uncomfortable? Where's the boundary? Does anybody have anything they want to say on that?
I've got a great example.
Thank you.
I'm on vacation, and I go into the pool, and there's a gentleman. He's about 70-ish, and he is staring at me. I'm like swimming around, and he just is checking me out. And I'm a pretty put together person. But the anger that I had towards that gentleman, I was so close to just going into his face and going, what? Why are you staring at me? What? Do you have a question? He got out of the pool, but I was so angry. Like, what are you staring at? He really ruffled my feathers, and I thought, oh, I've got this all pretty much put together as a human being. What is going on? So I think, you could be as confident in yourself, but someone does that, it really throws you for a loop. And, they say the best thing is, do you have a question, or do you have any questions for me, or I see that you're staring. I didn't have that opportunity. I wish I did, but it just shows you that even it could just happen in a blink of an eye, and you just wonder what is going on with that person.
Yeah, I think, yeah. Does anybody have anything else they want to add to that? Scott?
I do. I'm celebrating my 14th year of marriage. So sometimes people will be staring at me, and I know what they're staring at. But because I like to be provocative sometimes, I'll walk right up to them and say, I am so flattered, but I'm married.
Oh,
And then I'll sit back down or I'll walk away. You know, I'm not responsible. If you're staring at me, you can stare. If I wave and smile and you break away like you're clutching their pearls, you were staring for the wrong reason. If you're just checking me out because your brain's just taking a little longer to process and you don't know that you're staring, I have a lot more empathy towards that. But I get to take control of the situation too. So I'm married. I'm so flattered, but I'm married. You know, bring some humor into it.
Yeah, what I would do when I was younger, I decided one day, I was like, I'm going to give something for them to look at. So I'd always wear the most outrageous outfits and do the most outrageous makeup and embrace it, because the world is my runway, you know? Scott, that was so great. That was so funny. I can't get over that.
And we actually have a comment for Naomi. Somebody says, so unbelievably proud of you, Naomi. Your positive perspective has always been remarkable and contagious.
Thank you.
So, and I agree with that. You are, when I think you have so much wisdom to give and so much advice. So thank you.
Thank you.
Before we wrap up tonight, I think we could go on and on with this topic. What's the one takeaway you would like to share? What's the one piece of advice you would give to somebody, whether it's a parent, a child being bullied or teased, or somebody who's doing that? Anybody? I mean, what's the one takeaway you want to give? Scott?
4 words.
Mm-hmm.
You are not alone. Your community supports you whether we know your name or not. You are not the first person to be born with a craniofacial difference. And we get it, and we are your allies. Reach out to myFace. Reach out to these wonderful support systems. You may feel alone in the minute, but you're not, and we have your back.
Really good advice, and I agree. Thank you. Patricia, do you have anything you want to say?
Right on. Exactly. You are not alone. We are a community. There is support. There's programs to help guide you along the way. And the other thing is also, let's not forget that there's also professionals out there to help. When there's so many different degrees of bullying, and when it gets to that extreme, and you're not quite sure how to navigate, there are professionals out there to help you along the way, especially with bullying. It's such a hard thing to go through, but there are professionals as well to help.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think for me, I felt like my voice was silent when I was a child because of it. And I think it's so important to know that you have a voice and that you can use it to stand up for yourself and stand up for others. So thank you. Morgan, do you have anything?
Yeah, going off what everybody else said, and just because you might think you're alone and it might be hard right now, it's not going to be hard forever. And there's people who adore you and love you. You just got to find those people and find that community.
Thank you. And Naomi?
This too shall pass. Everything has its time and everything will run its course. And always understand it's not your fault. It is not your responsibility to have to educate everyone and to protect your peace and go towards the people and communities and that support you and love you and encourage you to be the best version of yourself. And go for that professional help. I mean, that saved me a lot growing up.
Thank you. You guys were amazing tonight, and I want to thank each of you for sharing so much of yourselves and today and every day. I'm
Thank you, Dina.
hopeful. Thank you. And I'm
Thank you.
hopeful that these conversations can help others better understand our stories while also creating a kinder world for all people with craniofacial differences. So thank you again, everybody. Before we wrap up, I just want to share, for 70 years, myFace has been dedicated to changing the faces and transforming the lives of children and adults with facial differences by providing access to holistic, comprehensive care, education, resources, and support that pave the way for better outcomes. To learn more, please visit myface.org. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to myFace's YouTube channel to catch future live broadcasts of myFace, myStory. You can also listen to the audio recording of your favorite podcast app, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, and iHeartRadio. If you'd like to receive reminders of new episodes, sign up at myface.org/mystory. That's myface.org/mystory. As we wrap up today's episode, I thank you for joining us and want to leave you with this quote by Maya Angelou. Develop enough courage so that you can stand up for yourself and then stand up for somebody else. Thank you for everyone for a great conversation tonight.